it wasn't until cutting-edge laser technology known as LiDAR or light detection and ranging became available that they were able to study the ruins in detail from above and discovered that what they thought was only a scattering of ancient stone huts was actually a veritable city.
Archaeologists discover a lost city using laser technology, new species of ancient humans found deep in a cave system, mythical creatures, giant millipedes. These are terrifying anomalies discovered in South Africa science warned you about. If you're at all interested in the evolution of humankind, the Cradle of Humankind, just outside of Johannesburg, is a must-see. The site is home to the largest known concentration of human ancestral remains in the entire world. One of the coolest areas are the caves, where tons of proto and early human fossils have been found. There are lots of cave systems, but the Rising Star cave system may be the most famous. It's where 15 skeletons of previously unknown hominin species, Homo Naledi, were discovered. There's also the Sterkfontein cave system, which has given us more than a third of the world's early hominid fossils. Inkanyamba is a legendary creature from South Africa described as a massive serpent with a horse-like head. This cryptid is said to measure over 20 feet long. It's believed to inhabit lakes and waterfalls, leading some to think it might actually be a giant eel rather than a snake. But the Inkanyamba is said to have supernatural powers and has control over powerful storms. For example, in 1998, a violent storm leveled thousands of homes, and some attributed it to this creature. Local lore says that Inkanyamba disappears during summer, transforming into a giant tornado to search for a mate. This seasonal absence has led locals to speculate that the creature is migratory, with sightings having been reported across different bodies of water. The creature got a lot of attention though in 1996 when a local newspaper offered a reward for photographic proof, and a couple of photos were sent in, one of which you're looking at right now. This photo was taken by a restaurant owner named Bob Teeny in 1995, who sent it to the paper a year later. Next up, we have Shongololo. Now, while that does sound like some sort of mythological creature or cryptid, these things are very much real, unfortunately. It's also called the giant African millipede. Just look at all those legs, all 256 of them. I thought the centipedes in my basement were bad enough. This is just a whole different level. These millipedes can grow up to a foot long and are covered in shiny segmented bodies that can come in various colors from dark brown to bright orange. As creepy as they look though, they are pretty harmless to humans, because you could just throw them on your face, apparently. Anyway, these things are mostly nocturnal and love to hide during the day under rocks, leaves, or logs, and at night they come out and feed on decaying plants. One interesting thing about the Shongololo is its defense mechanism. When threatened, it can curl up into a tiny ball, a lot like a pill bug. Some species even give off a foul-smelling substance to deter predators. Let's talk more about the discovery of Homo Naledi that I mentioned earlier, because discovering an entirely new species of early human would have just been incredible. So on September 13th, 2013, cavers Rick Hunter and Stephen Tucker were exploring the Rising Star cave system, where they found hominin fossils at the bottom of a chamber known as the Dinaledi Chamber. They then returned on September 24th to document the fossils and showed their photos to renowned paleoanthropologists Pedro Boshoff and Lee Berger. Berger quickly organized an excavation team that included Hunter and Tucker, dubbed the Underground Astronauts. The chamber itself was tough to access. It was far from the main entrance, very small, and it was a deep, steep drop. You had to actually get 6 kind of small women cavers to go into that space. They're the only ones who would be able to fit in there. In total, over 1,550 bone fragments belonging to at least 15 individuals were recovered, including 9 juveniles and 6 adults. The fossils included parts of the skull, jaw, ribs, limbs, and even inner ear bones. And this collection was the most extensive set of hominin fossils ever found in Africa at that time. In 2015, Berger and his team named the species Homo Naledi, with Naledi meaning star in the Sotho language, a nod to the cave's name. The most notable specimen, known as DH1, included a partial skull and jawbone. Later in 2017, more fossils from 3 more individuals were discovered in another part of the cave called the Lesedi chamber. South African folklore has a creature quite similar to a goblin. It's called a Tokoloshe, or Tonkolosh, or Tokoloshe. There are tons of different spellings and pronunciations, but they're mischievous and sometimes evil spirits, able to make themselves invisible by drinking water or swallowing a stone. While it can be used in a light-hearted way to scare people, its more sinister powers include causing illness or even death to those targeted by it. In traditional beliefs, the Tokoloshe is often summoned by people with malicious intent who want to cause trouble for others. One of the ways to protect against the creature is to raise your bed off the ground. It's said that sleeping on a raised surface keeps one safe from the Tokoloshe's grasp. Spiritual figures like pastors and traditional healers are also called upon to banish the creature and provide protection. The origins of this creature can be traced actually back to Bantu folklore, created to explain why some people were mysteriously dying in their homes at night. See, traditionally, people slept on the floor using grass mats around a wood fire for warmth, and unbeknownst to them, this setup could deplete oxygen and produce carbon monoxide, which is heavier than air and settles low. So people sleeping on the ground were vulnerable. Those who slept higher up, like on raised beds, often survived, leading to the belief that the Tokoloshe would strike people who were sleeping low down. Some tales describe the Tokoloshe as this short, hairy creature that can bite off the toes of unsuspecting sleepers. Archaeologists in South Africa discovered a lost city using laser technology. The Kweneng Ruins are the remains of a pre-colonial Swana capital in South Africa, just south of modern-day Johannesburg. This site was occupied from the 14th to 19th century, starting around the 1300s and reaching its peak in the 14th century. It was one of the largest settlements of the Swana people who spoke a Bantu language before the Europeans arrived. The Swana people created large and well-organized settlements that really impressed early European visitors, who described them as cities and metropolises. The site began as scattered homesteads in the 15th century, growing into a city by the 18th century. But it was probably abandoned sometime in the 1820s as colonial expansion was happening. Because of how thick the vegetation is in the area, the Kweneng Ruins were hard to spot from the air until researchers started using advanced techniques like LiDAR, which uses lasers to map out the land. And this technology revealed the layout of the ruins, including hundreds of households and a marketplace. What you're looking at here is what's called a Klerksdorp Sphere. The strange spheres were first discovered in Ottosdal, South Africa. Scientists date these spheres to around 3 billion years ago, claiming they are natural formations known as carbonate concretions. They range in size from half a centimeter to 10 centimeters or so, and a lot of them have these even grooves around them that make them look almost too perfect to be natural. So how did they form? Well, according to scientists, minerals developed in the gaps between sediments, similar to how crystals can sometimes take on very precise shapes, and over time, weathering wore down the surrounding rock, leaving these smooth, rounded balls behind. But there are some who believe that there could be more to the story. Since their discovery in South African mines, there have been all sorts of theories, like they could be evidence of ancient aliens. One story goes that a man took one of these spheres to NASA, where it was tested, and allegedly NASA concluded that the sphere could only have been created in zero gravity because of its perfect balance. Now, despite the lack of scientific evidence, some theorists have speculated that these spheres were created by intelligent beings 3 billion years ago. Others think that they might have been an ancient form of information technology used by some advanced civilizations long before humans existed. But again, the scientific community mostly agrees that the spheres are just natural formations, but what do you think? A story just came out this year about a really fascinating cave painting in South Africa. The Horned Serpent panel is this piece of rock art created by the San people of South Africa between 1821 and 1835. This panel features various animals, but one of them really stands out, a long-bodied creature with downward turned tusks that doesn't match any known modern species in the area. Researcher Julien Benoit stated, as the Sand People are known to have included various aspects of their surroundings into art, including fossils, the tusk creature might have been inspired by an extinct species. In the Karoo Basin where the rock art is located, there are tons of well-preserved fossils, including those of tusked animals called dicynodonts. These creatures lived a long time before humans appeared in Africa and were already extinct by the time the Sand created their artwork. But there are Sand myths about large animals that once roamed the region. Benoit points out a couple key factors that make him think the rock art is a depiction of a dicynodont. One, the tusks face downward, which matches dicynodonts and not any modern African animal, and the area is full of their fossils, so seems pretty clear-cut. Kamappa is a mythical creature from the Basotho people of southern Africa, described as this shapeless, gluttonous monster. It has an insatiable appetite, swallowing everything in its path, both people and animals. As it devours more and more, it grows larger and larger. It's also said to have multiple sharp tongues, which it uses as deadly weapons. According to the story, Kamappa rampaged through towns and villages, consuming all living beings. Only one woman managed to survive by hiding in the ashes of her home. After the monster had swallowed nearly everyone, it became so bloated that it got stuck in a mountain pass. As the last human, the woman prayed to God, begging for a way to continue humanity. In response to her prayers, she became pregnant and eventually gave birth to a son named Ditolan. To her shock, Ditolan grew into a fully grown man almost instantly. His mother explained the terrible fate that had befallen their people at the hands of Kamappa. Ignoring her warnings, Ditolan decided to confront the beast himself. Armed with a blade, he bravely confronted the beast, which swallowed him whole. But he survived inside its belly, using his blade to tear through its insides. With a final roar, Kamappa fell dead, and Ditolan emerged, freeing thousands of people who had been trapped inside the monster. The Grootslang is a creature, again, from South African folklore. Much like the Inkanyamba I talked about earlier, this one is also a giant serpent with the head of another animal, this time an elephant. It's said to live in a cave known as the Wonder Hole or the Bottomless Pit, found in the Richardsveld region. This cave is said to connect to the ocean about 40 miles away, and some legends claim that it's filled with diamonds. Local stories say that the cave goes down about 60 feet before branching off into steep passages, and somewhere lurking down there is the ancient, powerful serpent known as the Grootslang, which hoards and guards precious gems and gold. There are plenty of legends of men descending into the cave in search of treasures never to be seen again. In 1917, an English businessman named Peter Grayson vanished while searching for treasure in the Richtertsveld, leading to stories that the Grootslang had something to do with his disappearance. With all that said, I've been your host, James. I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.